Well, I don't know whether anybody's interested, but I used to have a sonic toothbrush, not a sonic screwdriver, a sonic toothbrush. There were no charging connections on it. You put it on its base, plugged it in, and it was charged by sonic waves, sound waves. At first I thought it would be magnetic waves, but no, this was sonic waves. So presumably, if you can charge it sonically, you can discharge it sonically. And I found with my Li-ion batteries on my electric bike that it's as if someone steals half the power out of them while they're locked in the house. But I would imagine you have to get pretty close to do that sonically, but presumably you can do it with magnetic fields as well. So they're not very good. You can't do it with lead acid. You can't do it with ordinary old-fashioned batteries. But Li-ion, I believe there were Li-ion batteries in this toothbrush, and that. So if you can do it with the toothbrush, it wasn't a special battery. It was just an ordinary Li-ion battery. So presumably, if you can do it with that, you can do it with electric bikes, electric cars, and electric everything else. So are these sort of protests about them exploding and catching fire and that just sort of a polite way or subtle way of saying they don't work? Because obviously if you park one in a car park, somebody can sonically discharge the battery and pay off with all your energy. I mean, yeah, they used to steal fuel out of petrol tanks, but they've cured that because there's now such a sort of it's similar to a U-bend on a toilet or a bath or a sink. The U-bend is like that. It has water in, and it stops fumes like sewage fumes coming up the pipe, or any stench coming up the pipes, or spiders or anything else like that. They can't get through that. Or insects or bugs, there's a lot. Sometimes you get back pressure from the drains and it'll blow the water out, but in theory, it should go back down in again. But I had a friend who had all his petrol stolen out of his car. They didn't siphon it out because it had an anti-siphon device and a bend in the filler neck. What did they do? They crawled underneath and cut the fuel lines and drained it all out into a can. But with my car, you can't do that because I took the fuel tank off because I was going to try and electrify it, but I've given up altogether with the car altogether now. But what happened was it says if you want to take the fuel tank off, make sure it's almost empty because you can't pump it out. If you disconnect the fuel line from the fuel system at the front, the pump senses there's no line pressure or pressure in the fuel line and won't pump. Well, that's not a bad idea, actually. It's probably incorporated into them all now, because obviously if you rupture a petrol pipe halfway down the car and you have an accident, there's a fire under the car, it's going to pump petrol, because if you're knocked unconscious and you can't switch the ignition off, the fuel pump will be running and it'll pump a few gallons every minute onto the floor underneath the car. It'll spread out underneath the car and you'll be dead. That's what they say about LPG and other gaseous fuels. They rise. So if they catch fire, they're above you and not below you, because obviously they're below you, they'll fry you to death. But yeah, I mean, how did they? Yeah, they cut the fuel line on his car, but with my car, you can't get to the fuel lines until the tank's out, or you can go inside the car, and if it's locked, the thieves can't do that, and you can get to the fuel line through an inspection hatch under the back seat, because the tank is right in the middle of the car under the back seat. It can't be hit from in front or behind. It's in a really safe place. Obviously, the fuel lines are above the tank. Where they go after that, I believe. No, they're underneath the middle of the car in front of the tank, so they're behind the back seats, and you'd have to jack the car up to get to access them. They wouldn't bother. Yeah, in the olden days, they could crawl underneath the back end of the car, cut the fuel lines, nobody would hear them, and they clear off with your fuel. But I don't know, do they actually go under the car? No, they don't go inside. It's not a rally car, but yeah, the fuel comes out the top of the tank, into fuel lines, and along the transmission tunnel. So you'd have to jack the car up to get to them, and they just won't bother, because they'll hear you jacking it up. You'll hear them jacking it up, or if they use a trolley jack, you can hear them for miles. But with any jack, you'll hear them jack it up, because you'll hear the jacking gauge wherever they put it under the car, and you hear it against the ground. But yeah, it's impossible to do. Like, yeah, they're saying, they've drilled through the tank. Really? You put a drill bit against the tank. Mine is a composite tank, it's not a metal tank. But with any tank, if you drill against it, there's going to be friction. There's fumes in the tank. if you get a spark or heat, there's going to be a big bang and they'll be dead. And half the street will be blown away. Because I had a faulty fuel pump, and then I had a faulty fuel. The fuel pump has the sender unit for the fuel gauge in. I bought a fuel gauge. I was going to put it in the tank, and I thought, nah. From what I was told at college, you don't weld a tank or anything like that because you can never get the fumes out, and it's the fumes that ignite and not the petrol itself. So no, you never weld a petrol tank. But the thing is, I took the fuel pump out and I put the fuel gauge sender into the remains of the fuel pump, and it all fitted in. But I've managed to get a second-hand fuel pump. It was cheaper. Like they say, if you want to, it's better to buy a second-hand, genuine, original equipment manufacturer's pump or parts, because they're better than a lot of the parts that come from other manufacturers. The new ones, the old second-hand genuine ones are better than them anyway. And obviously I've got a second-hand genuine one for 20 quid. A new genuine one starts 150 and they can go up to 330 depending where you buy them from. And they're all the same, and that one just works. It's just the same job. Yeah, if it breaks down, you buy another one, don't you, instead of spending £300 a time on one that may break down anyway. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no way into my tank, and a lot of the ones they say have been drilled, there's actually a screw-in bung, and that's what they've taken out. But again, you'd have to jack the car to get to that. You couldn't crawl under far enough. You couldn't reach it. Well, on my car, you couldn't, because you couldn't get under the back. You can't get under the back end unless it's jacked up, and you can't get under from the front either. You can't get under from the sides. So if you had a screw-in bung, you couldn't take that out. But that's what they do. They don't drill into the tank. They take a screw-in bung out and take the bung. Well, they won't bother with the bung. They're more interested in the petrol because it's valuable. The bung may be on the floor, and you screw it back in and make sure it's sealed and fill it with petrol again. No way would you drill into a tank unless you're mad. But yeah, I mean, you don't hear a petrol being stolen anymore, but it used to be. But yeah, obviously, from what I can see, they can steal your energy out of your electric car. They don't explode. There's a big fuse inside the battery casing. The cells are in a metal case. They don't catch fire. That's nonsense. Well, certain makes and certain models of battery do, they say, but I don't believe any of that. I mean, they'd have to heat up, and they're inside a metal case, so they'd have to heat the metal case. And on top of that, if there's a short circuit, which would cause the heat, the fuse will blow like that. And the system's constantly monitoring for the slightest short circuit, and if they sense one, they'll shut the whole system down. So whether they catch fire is debatable, but yeah, they possibly can steal the energy from the battery. Because obviously they used to do it with petrol, they can't do that with... If the mine's a, 2006 car, so it's 17 years old. So I would have, if that one has it, I would imagine most modern ones have it. But yeah, electric cars. No, and that's the thing. I bought all the parts to electrify mine. The battery set, a small battery, an old one, 330 kilograms. How much is a tank of fuel? It's not going to be nowhere near that, is it? Yeah, the motors are powerful, but there's so much weight in the cars, and that's the problem. If I put a motor into my car from a bigger car, it's the only one I could get cheaply. It doesn't need gears. The gear in my car, in top gear, is lower than the original car. The original car was single speed and twice the weight, so it's going to be accelerate faster, and the motor produces over twice as much power as my car engine. My car's only half the weight of the car it came from. It's not going to work. The insurance is going to be silly. The acceleration is going to be silly because they're not daft as they are. It's not worth doing. And if the weight of the battery, yeah, the electricity is cheap, but apparently you can only charge them for 4 hours a night in this country, and that won't charge them. So, they're a waste of time. And if people can steal your charge, you can be charging them up, and they can be stealing it while you're charging it. If you're in the house, you won't notice. But that's the thing. Yeah, you can charge them at a rapid charging station if you can find one. But if they you can steal your energy, they're a waste of time, aren't they? And what else I was going to say? I think I've said most of it, but charging and that, and the weight of the batteries. But that's all extra weight, because that was the problem with my car. It's going to overload the crumple zone at the front end, and I've heard of people electrifying petrol and diesel cars and then having an accident and killing or maiming someone because they've done it themselves and they didn't notice themselves, then they didn't know about the crumple zones, they've been liable. The insurance companies say, you never told us, or you haven't done it properly, it's your fault, and these companies go bust. The companies that electrify the cars, they go bust because they don't take this into account. And I've heard of there's new electric car manufacturers springing up. They're just new manufacturers, and there's problems with them because they're not designed properly. And they have the same problem of killing people and maiming people, and they're going bust because the manufacturers are getting sued. There's a lot of problems with them. There's no infrastructure to charge them. There is a local charging point down the road from me, but I've never seen anyone use it. Possibly like works vans and stuff, but whether they know about the problems with them, I don't know. Yeah, they're buying these vans because they're environmentally friendly and protesters like them and stuff, but if they get all their energy stolen, they're going to start protesting against the protesters, aren't they? They're not going to buy any more. I don't know, as far as I know, that it can be done. So I'm glad I didn't even bother to electrify mine, and I would have overloaded my crumple zones anyway.